first two layers of this painting were just blocking in, so I started with very rough shapes and then I added to those shapes and made them more refined. And my third layer is going back over the same thing again and just making the shape smaller and making the contrast more definite. I'm trying to build the surface ready for my detail. So I'm just going to show you this. It's pretty much the same. I'm just using a slightly smaller brush, and again it's about upping your contrasts, getting your colours refined if you needed to. Pat made a point here when she came over and had a look, which I thought was very valid, is actually my painting is, you didn't use this word, Pat, but is a bit scruffy. You didn't use that word, and that's what I, you know, this stage we need to be a little bit more random.
Yeah.
You didn't say my painting was scruffy, but I
can't remember what I did say now, but it was more blended, wasn't it? More, yeah.
I think you said something about it being a bit less neat than you expected, or you know, something along those lines.
I think what I was trying to say was there was blocks, whereas I've tried to blend all the colours.
Me too.
And you've got more blocks of definite colours and just kind
I've
of
allowed
the edges.
them the difference. Yes.
Yeah. Whereas I've just made a homogeneous mess.
Well, before you start the next layer, then perhaps come and have a closer look at my scruffiness.
Do you sometimes with your brush almost do a dry brush?
It is quite,
brush in effect?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Too dark for there. So this is making my shape smaller, and Jackie, like we did with yours, that sort of feathering the edge. I'm feathering my colours across one another quite a lot.
You've not only got to paint, but you've got to analyse what you're doing when you're painting as well, haven't you? So you can explain to us. That must be quite tricky.
You do get used to it. And I have got to the point sometimes where I narrate myself when I'm sitting here by myself. It has been known.
So you're making those areas quite a lot whiter now. You're kind of beginning to bring the surf. I know you haven't done it.
I haven't put any
detail, but you're bringing the white much more to the fore, aren't you?
I tend to work dark to light. So when I'm painting acrylics, I put all my darks in first, and then I gradually increase my lights. It's just a habit. It's quite a practical thing to do with acrylics. To gradually build your lights onto your darks. Here, what I'm trying to do is I'm thinking of the surface of the water as a piece of fabric, and I'm trying to get all of the ripples and the nuances of that surface ready for when I put my detail and all my fluff and everything on the top. And the sea kind of, although you have a wave that goes up and down, you'll have another wave that goes up and down opposite to it, and then there's a dip in the middle. So, you know, it's just about getting all of these sort of contrasts. Shadow across my canvas doesn't help you see what I'm doing, but... And when I want to blend something out, I've put a bit of colour in, I've washed my brush, I've dabbed it off, and then just leave it. There's something else you have to remember, and this is part of the reason why you put your darks in first and then your lights, is that acrylic will dry slightly darker than you paint it. So you paint it, and then when it's dried, you go, oh, that's a bit dark, and so you have to then put some more light on top. So it's just a classic thing with
Which
acrylics.
is the reverse of watercolour, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Can you still see all right there, Johanna?
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Well, it's just because I've got my back to you. Can you still see all right there?
Yeah, fine.
I quite like this. These little planes and the way the water's just changing direction in parts. And the thing is, sometimes you want to make things a little bit darker where you're going to be having lots of your froth on top. If you don't have it darker underneath, the froth won't show up. So again, sometimes it's just that little bit of exaggerating that you're doing. It's the, as you said, artistic license.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? As long as you're not painting St Paul's Cathedral or something, you know, it's...
Yeah.
See, if you took that photograph 2 seconds later, it'd be different anyway.
Absolutely, and if I took the same photograph and printed it on a different piece of paper,
Yeah.
it would look different. And it's one of the things I find hardest to cope with is when people sit there and they're painting and they're mixing and mixing and mixing colours. I can't get exactly that colour.
No.
Well, as long as you've got roughly that colour, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to add...
But that's just confidence in colour mixing, isn't it? If you're not sure what you're doing, you think you've got to be exact.
Well, it's confidence, but it's also practicalities. You know, like I say, if I mixed a colour in 10 minutes' time, it would, you know, like you say, the light would be different, everything would be different.
But if we didn't realise you were painting from a picture, if you moved that picture, your colours are perfect.
Thank you. It's not quite the same as that, though.
No, but
Yeah.
That's the point, though, isn't it? You know, without that to compare it with, your colours are perfect.
They work, yeah.
They work well together.
Here I'm starting to add the froth and the foam onto my sea. And initially I put down a blue white, so I added some ultramarine to my white, and that gave me the shadow colour for the waves. And then when that's dried back a little bit, I start adding some brighter whites, and that gives me the sunlight hitting the surface of the froth. I'm using a small brush here and I'm just dobbing around, and I want it to be quite random. It's quite hard to be as random as you need to. We are neater than we think we should be. It's a bit like painting clouds. You're trying to get all of those little random lights and shadows. This area here is on the shadow side of my wave, so I'm using my, I call it a dirty white, but it's that ultramarine and white together, giving me this sort of pale, soft blue, and that gives me the shadow colour of my foam. And I'm just dragging that down from the crest of that wave. Just where it's picking up the foam from the previous wave and stretching it out. And where it's out from under the shadow of that wave, I've gone much brighter white where the sun is hitting it. Now, you have to hold it quite close to the paper, otherwise all the splatters just drop off of the canvas. If you're not comfortable doing that, then you can do that. I find I've got more control doing this. You can also do this with your shadow colour. So you get, down here you get a few in shadow splatters. And then the other brush, this is one where you get dirty. And this is a much smaller spot when you do it this way. And again, you can use this to break up edges. If you've got a hard edge that you want to cover over, you can do something with, you know, very similar colour, and it just breaks that edge up. So I'm coming back in here with just a small brush, and I'm building up my detail. So this is the little tracery of the foam on the top of the wave, and I'm building that in amongst my splatter, and just seeing how it feels dragging that up across the edge of the wave. This is probably my favourite bit, so I spend a lot of time doing this and I really enjoy it. This is where I feel the whole thing starts to come to life. So this is the bit that really excites me, getting all of this layering of all of that. It's basically air bubbles on the top of the water. And now I have my surface shapes all there. I'm just following those contours that I created in the earlier stages of the painting, and the foam can now sit on top of all of that, and I get all that variety going on underneath where I'm building all of this layering. It makes it much more interesting having those underneath shapes already built for me. Again, I'm just building layers, and the rest of this painting, there's an awful lot of this building the layers and building the texture on the surface. And here, where I'm putting the foam over the top of the sand area, what it ends up looking like is, what I'm hoping it ends up looking like, is that there is a thin layer of water over that sand. It's not just that the sea comes to an edge on the sand, but you can see it underneath. Now I'm coming back over those shapes that I created within the water. I hope that by adding the foam, those shapes and the rise and fall of the surface becomes more obvious. As you come closer to the foreground, I tend to break my shapes up more, which is what I'm doing here. I've got more sort of dots and dashes. And the closer you are to this foam, the more you see it as that lace work that everybody is so familiar with. So this is the start of it. So I put down a few dots and dashes, and then I've got a damp brush, and I'm pulling those shapes around, and this creates little holes and pockets and gaps, and that's where the lace work begins to appear. So I'm continuing to build my lace work, coming forward, bringing it nearer to me. And it's the same as I've done before. It's just creating those little dots, dashes, holes, all of that froth. And I'm continually following the surface that I created, those ups and downs that I created in that initial shading that I was doing. And I can add some darker bits, some shadow white, some bright white, but it all adds to that sense of sunlight and movement on the water. So I'm now back at the edge of this wave where it's a more dense layer of foam. So I'm back to that, trying to create the random light and shadow with that sort of roiling, boiling edge of that wave. Well, I hope you are getting as lost in watching this as I was in painting this. Sorry there wasn't much talking during that section, but I was just repeating what I'd been doing before, so I didn't feel the need to explain going over and over again. I hope you've really enjoyed watching me bring this painting together. I thoroughly enjoyed painting it, and thank you to the group for allowing me to share some of those moments that they were involved in as well.